the night of the murders. November 13th, 1974 was like any other cold autumn night in Amityville, a quiet town on Long Island, New York. But inside the Dutch colonial house at 112 Ocean Avenue, something unthinkable was about to unfold. Ronald "Butch" DeFeo Jr. lay awake in his room, the weight of his father's rage pressing down on him like a storm cloud. For years, Ronald Sr. had ruled their home with an iron fist. His voice was loud, his fists were cruel, and his temper was unpredictable. Butch had learned to drown out the noise, first with resentment, then with drugs. But tonight, there was something else, something sinister, whispering in his ear. At precisely 3:15 a.m., Butch rose from his bed, his mind blank yet buzzing. In his hands was a .35 caliber Marlin 336C rifle. He moved through the house with eerie precision, stepping into his parents' bedroom first. 2 shots for his father, 2 for his mother. The sound of the gunfire should have woken the others, but they never stirred. It was as if someone was keeping them asleep. One by one, he entered his siblings' rooms, his hands steady, his heart void of fear. Dawn, Allison, Mark, John. Each child lay still, oblivious to the horror around them until their final moment. When it was done, Butch stood in the darkened hallway, surrounded by silence and the scent of gunpowder. By morning, Butch had cleaned himself up, discarded his bloody clothes, and gone about his day as if nothing had happened. That evening, he stormed into a local bar, panic in his voice. "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." The patrons followed him back to the house, their breath catching as they discovered the massacre. Police arrived within minutes, and by the next night, Butch's story unraveled under questioning. The mob hit theory was a lie. The truth was far more chilling. "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast," he confessed. Later, Butch claimed he had heard voices, whispers in the walls, urging him to kill. But was it his mind breaking under years of abuse and drug use? Or was there truly something inside the house, something evil that had taken hold of him? No one knew for sure.
This is WOR New York. Stay tuned for In Conversation.
First, this bulletin from the WOR newsroom. 6 members of one family have been found shot to death in their nightclothes in their expensive home in Amityville, Long Island. The only available information at this moment, according to the Amityville Village Police, is that the victims have been identified as members of the DeFeo family. They were found by a 23-year-old son, Ronald DeFeo, who is believed to be the only surviving member of the family. 6 members of the family found shot to death in their home in Amityville, Long Island. We will have further details on the 11 o'clock news.
He came, he opened the door, and he was screaming, "Come on, help me, somebody shot my mother and father." Everyone ran out of the bar, and that was it. They all took off. No, I had to stay. I was tending bar. They all jumped in his car and took off.
Today, police combed the DeFeo's handsome 3-story house for clues while divers explored the backyard swimming pool for the still unfound murder weapon. Police have been questioning the son, Ronald, and now say he is being, quote, safeguarded. Investigators say without explanation that they now feel young DeFeo was in the house at the time of the murders, but they're not yet considering him a suspect. And so
We
forth.
have no suspect at this time. We have no indication of the motive at this time.
What about Ronald DeFeo, the son, the surviving son?
Ronald is being safeguarded by the Suffolk County Police at this time.
Why safeguarded?
Why? Because there's 6 members of the family dead, and we don't know why, and he's the sole remaining member.
Is he also a suspect?
He's not a suspect at this time.
Few people in the neighborhood knew the family well, but those who did described them as close-knit.
Well, I think they were just very sweet, very religious people, very family-minded people. And that's about all I could say. Very good, very generous, just tight. Very close with their children.
There's one element in the usual mass murder story which seems to be missing from this case. There's no sense of fear in this community. No feeling of a mass murderer on the loose. People we talked to seem to feel that whatever was the motive for this crime, it had something to do with the family. It's not something that's going to return to bother anyone else. In Amityville, Long Island, Phil Barno, News Center 4.
The trial of Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. began on October 14, 1975, nearly a year after the night of horror at 112 Ocean Avenue. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Butch, now clean-shaven and dressed in a suit, sat at the defendant's table. The world watched, transfixed by the gruesome details of the case. His defense attorney, William Weber, sought to prove insanity. He painted a portrait of a young man plagued by voices, tormented by unseen forces that had whispered in the darkness. He was not in control of his actions, Weber argued. He believed he was acting under some supernatural influence, but the prosecution, led by Gerald Sullivan, was ruthless. They dismissed the notion of an evil presence and instead focused on cold, hard facts. He knew what he was doing, Sullivan stated, his voice unwavering. He executed his family, one by one, in cold blood. He cleaned himself up. He went to work. He fabricated a story about the mafia. These are not the actions of a man in a psychotic break. These are the actions of a murderer who knew exactly what he was doing. The evidence was damning. The bodies had been found in their beds, all face down, as if something had kept them from waking up despite the deafening gunfire. Toxicology reports revealed that none of them had been drugged. The Marlin .35 caliber rifle was loud, too loud for 6 people to sleep through. Yet no one had moved. The jury deliberated for just 7 hours before returning their verdict. Guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. On November 21st, 1975, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms, ensuring he would never again walk free. As the judge read the sentence, Butch showed little reaction. He simply sat there, his face an unreadable mask. The courtroom was silent, save for the quiet sobbing of distant relatives. In prison, Butch DeFeo's story changed constantly. He claimed his sister Dawn had committed some of the murders. He blamed the mafia. He insisted he was possessed. But the world had moved on. The Amityville house had been sold. New occupants came and went. Hollywood twisted the story into something beyond reality, turning it into a legend. Meanwhile, Butch faded into the background, another killer lost in the prison system. The prison hospital at Albany Medical Center was a stark, lifeless place filled with the quiet hum of machines and the scent of antiseptic. Ronald DeFeo Jr., once the face of the Amityville murders, now lay frail and wasted beneath fluorescent lights. His once intimidating frame had withered, his eyes hollow. For years, he had lived with the weight of what he had done. The ghosts of that night never left him. Whether they were real or just figments of a fractured mind, only he knew. A nurse adjusted the IV drip, glancing down at the old man. The name, DeFeo, no longer sent shivers down people's spines. The world had moved on. At 6:35 p.m., his breathing slowed. His chest rose one last time, then fell. And just like that, the man who had once been the center of one of America's most infamous murder cases was gone. No final words, no last confession, just silence. Outside, the world continued, untouched by his passing. The house on 112 Ocean Avenue remained its history, forever marked by the horror that had unfolded within its walls. Some claimed it was cursed, others dismissed it as a legend, but one thing was certain: the story of Ronald DeFeo Jr. would never truly die.